So we just got a teaser for Ghost of Yotei. It comes out next year, a lot sooner than I thought, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of super quick things that I'd love to see in the sequel. Number 1, better lip sync. I know this one sounds kind of dumb and minor, but honestly, going back to Ghost of Tsushima a few weeks ago, I really didn't remember just how bad the lip sync was. Enough that the game goes well out of its way to hide characters' faces whenever they can. As beautiful as the original game is, I find this a lot more immersion breaking than if it had like PS3 graphics, so I'm really hoping the sequel fixes that. Number 2, diverse boss fights. The boss fights in Ghost of Tsushima were really well framed and cinematic. I liked how they felt like a samurai duel, and especially on harder difficulties, they really feel like an epic showdown. It's honestly really impressive that the game was able to make short, fun boss fights in an era where most great bosses have like 12 health bars and look like this. But most of these are also fairly one-dimensional. A lot of the boss fights recycle moves from regular enemies, and mechanically they're all pretty similar. I'm curious to see if they find a way to spice things up in Yotei, and one potential way of doing so is tied to number 3, more supernatural stuff. In my opinion, the highlights of Ghost of Tsushima's side content was the mystic tales, from the presentation of these stories to the more creatively structured quest lines to the supernatural climax that they all lead to, and I think Sucker Punch needs to lean heavier into the mystic side of this series. There's so much potential to fight different monsters, gain unique powers, and completely transform stealth if the game upped the supernatural elements. They played around with that a little bit in Legends, which I thought was great. There's obviously still a balance that's required. I do like the somewhat grounded aspects of the first game, but I'd love to see more of this, including with number 4, animal transformations. In the blog post and trailer for Yotei, there's references to the animal friends our main character meets along the way, and I'd love for that to go a step further and give us access to a handful of animal transformations, like a wolf to track people and a bird to fly around the island. You know how Assassin's Creed lets you scout areas with a bird? Well, what if you were the bird? I don't know, that would be pretty freaking sick. This is probably the least likely on my list to come true, and chances are you just have a slightly deeper connection to animals than Jin did, but I think this would be incredible. Number 5, more story presence. Especially if you explore the island a lot in Ghost of Tsushima, it takes a long time to feel like any real progress is being made in the story. And considering how much urgency these stories have, that feels a little bit weird. I'm hoping Yotei is denser with its narrative, instead of having just a few moments during the game where the rate of cutscenes spikes and then you just go back to cracking heads for the next 10 hours. Also, number 6, you gotta improve those side quests. This is, in my opinion, the weakest part of the original game. Outside of the mystic tales, there's a few major character tales which are like 10-part side quests where you're just trying to find someone or something, and each part is just looking at the place where they were last seen, beating up 5 goons and saying, well, I guess they're not here, and then leaving to go do something else. And then there's the non-character side quests, which are kind of like if the Fetch the Frying Pan quest in The Witcher 3 happened 85 times, but in Japan. Please improve the side quest with this one. Number 7, let's get some smarter goons in here. It's been 300 years since Ghost of Tsushima. That's 300 years of knowledge that the enemies in these camps now have. And hopefully what that means is that if I kill somebody in front of you, you don't just go back to your post like nothing happened. Number 8, tweak the morality system. Since the infamous games, Sucker Punch has had a really linear take on morality and plays it somewhat safe with its multiple endings, and while I don't want the Ghost series to turn into a straight-up RPG franchise, I do think it would be nice to have some more complex behavior in response to different playstyles, like the high and low chaos runs in Dishonored change how the world works. Give my character some edge in cutscenes or specific tools and powers if I'm taking on the spirit of the Ghost versus playing honorably. Speaking of the spirit of the Ghost, number 9, the spirit of the Ghost. The idea that the moniker of Ghost is being passed on through generations is honestly really great. I think it has a lot of potential, and if the game does go for a supernatural direction, it gives a chance for some mystical wackiness, like Jin Sakai acting as a spiritual guide of some kind. Whether it's directly talking to you like the Black Panther Shadow Realm, or speaking to you through the world like an alternate version of the guiding wind mechanic. I'm honestly not that bummed that this game doesn't follow his story because I never thought he was that great of a character, but some reference to his story would be very welcome. And number 10, some more weapons. The super quick sizzle reel at the end of the trailer shows off some new tools, buffs, and weapons, including a gun. Pretty snazzy. And I hope that leads to a more complex combat system in the sequel. Don't get me wrong, the first game's combat system is great. I actually think it's almost perfect. But I want the sequel to not worry about reining the player in and making things look cinematic. Just give us way more options to engage with enemies, and while it may not end up being as tight as Tsushima's combat, it'll give this one more of a distinct gameplay loop. Those are a couple of things I really want to see from Ghost of Yotei. Let me know what you'd want to see, leave a comment, subscribe for more video essay speedruns, check out my main channel, it's on the screen right now, and I'll see you all next time.